Welcome everyone to the Survival Guide. My name is Limbic, and today we are going to be playing a game called Banished. In this game, you play as a group of families who are in exile and decide to build their little town in order to survive and prosper. In this video, you should learn everything you need to know in order to get a good start and be successful no matter what difficulty you choose to play on. Alright, without any further ado, let's go ahead and hit this button and begin a new game. Now once you hit the new button, you will be brought to this window. This is where you can basically choose your starting conditions. This is a town name. You can either randomize it or enter whatever you wish. This is the map seed. This will generate your map. So if you wish to have your map look exactly like the one in this video, go ahead and copy down this number and enter it into your map seed. Next we have the terrain type. You can choose between mountains and valleys. If you put it on mountains, the terrain will be much more rugged and you will generally have much less space and you will have a much harder time gathering resources efficiently. I will talk about why very shortly. Same with terrain size. You can put it on small, medium, or large. Small is by far the hardest because, similar to putting the terrain type on mountains, you will have far less space in order to place all of your buildings properly. Climate, you can put it on mild, fair, or harsh. Basically the difference between those is that on harsh climate, the winters get much colder, forcing your civilians into their homes much more often, and in general slowing you down very greatly. Disasters on or off, we're going to leave those on, and starting conditions, hard, medium, or easy. On hard, you start with only 4 families, some clothing, food, and firewood. You have some tools, but no seeds and no animals. If you start on easy, on the other hand, you get 6 families, large amounts of clothing, food, firewood, and building materials. You get houses and storage, and seeds, and fields, and animals. We're going to put it on hard though, so do please bear in mind that some of this information may differ slightly if you choose an easier difficulty, mostly because while we will have to build our own houses, if you start on easy, you will start with houses. And if you followed our guide exactly, it might actually be bad, because that would mean that you built too many houses too early and you might get overpopulated. So please do bear that in mind. Alright, let's go ahead and hit OK and get into the game of Banished. Alright, the first thing I always do is pause the game by hitting the spacebar. Next, I come down to this menu here, open up the Tools and Reports options, and click the first 4 buttons. Honestly, I feel like these 4 windows should be open by default, but they're not, so we just have to open them up every game. I choose to position my windows like this. This is just how I like it. You can, of course, position them however you want. Let's go ahead and explain what each of these are. The minimap here is not too useful. I just kind of like to have it up just for my personal preference. You can totally get away with having it closed, though. Up to you. Here we have the town screen. Here's the name of your town. This shows how many homeless people we have. We'll go ahead and sort that out soon enough. This shows you what season and what year it is, so it's year 1 in the early spring. This shows you how many adults, students, and children you have. We have 8 adults, 0 students, and 9 children. This shows you the temperature, which is in Fahrenheit, which is 39 degrees Fahrenheit is roughly 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Here are all of your materials. This is your health and your happiness. The next window is the event log. This will let you know when somebody is born, or somebody dies, or a trader arrives at your trading post, or there's a tornado, all sorts of useful information like that. And then this is your professions window. This allows you to assign jobs to your laborers in order to control your citizens much more easily. Alright, let's go ahead and zoom out now and get situated with our starting location. Now the first thing you should be looking for is a place with lots of forest, and ideally a little bit of a clearing so that you don't have to clear stuff away in order to build your buildings. Unfortunately, as you can see here, we are not going to have that luxury, but that's fine, we'll deal with it. The first thing I like to do is go to the Removal and Destruction tools and select Remove Resources, and select just a small amount of resources to remove. You don't want to go completely crazy. You don't want to just select absolutely everything. One, because you want to keep some forests up, and two, if you select all of that, it will take forever. You can, of course, cancel that, but I just like it better to select small amounts at a time so that, you know, nothing goes too out of hand and that everything's always nice and under control. Alright, the first building I create is always a hunting cabin. Do you see this yellow ring around it? You basically want as many trees in this ring as possible. So we're going to go ahead and place this here. Unfortunately, our citizens will have to clear out everything, all of these iron and trees in order to build that. That's why ideally you want to place it in a clearing. Although, as I mentioned before, we don't have that luxury, so we'll just have to deal with it. The next thing I'd like to build is a gatherer's hut. I always like to make sure these buildings are facing each other, just to make it easier with building roads and such, which we'll get into a little later. So we'll go ahead and place the gatherer's hut here. And with those first two buildings placed, I'm going to go ahead and assign 4 of my citizens to be builders. I'm going to put the simulation speed on ×10, and I'm going to unpause the game and let them get underway. Now, you can probably already guess why it's so much harder putting it on mountain terrain and putting it on terrain size small. If you had it on terrain size large or on valleys or both, it would be much easier to find good forest locations and with a clearing, so that you would be able to place these buildings much more easily. Now, something I managed to forget already is you want to go to the Storage, Markets, and Trade tab and build a stockpile. I always like to put these right next to our storage cart and make it a 5x5. Of course, as long as you don't make it too small, and of course you don't want to make it way too big. The size is up to you. I just like 5x5, and the nice thing about stockpile is it builds instantly, and it gives your citizens a place to put all the materials. So you can see all this wood and iron and stone just kind of lying around. Now they have a place to put it all. So you should be building that before you unpause it. I just managed to forget, so whoops. Alright, so you can see our citizens have harvested all the things I had selected, so I'll just go ahead and select some more resources for them to cut down. And we'll just wait for them to finish building the hunting cabin and the gatherer's hut. The reason why you want to build these two buildings first is because they start to generate food for you. And even though it looks like we have tons of food right now, believe me, that will run out very quickly, and you certainly do not want your citizens starving to death. So right now they're just placing the materials that we need down. We are already low on stones, so despite the fact that we want the forest here, we can actually tell our citizens to collect only the stone or only the iron in an area. And since there's lots of stone here, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, you might be wondering, well, how do our citizens decide what order they're going to do things in? The simple answer is, your citizens will do what you tell them to do in the order that you tell them to do it. So since we told them to harvest these resources first, and then selected these, they'll cut down these trees first, and then come over and harvest the stone. There is a way to remedy this solution, and that's by going over to this tab and clicking the increase priority, and just dragging over here. The reason we're doing that is because we really want stone right now. We have enough logs for the time being in order to start these two buildings, or at least almost enough logs, and we really want to make sure we get this hunting cabin and this gatherer's hut constructed right away, because as I mentioned before, we really do not want anyone to starve to death. So as you can see, they are constructing the hunting cabin. It's almost done, and it is done. I like to assign 3 people right away to start working there, because you really do, I know I probably sound like a broken record here, but you really do not want to run out of food. So assigning the maximum number of people to the hunting cabin helps prevent that issue. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and assign just 2 people to the gatherer's hut, and now that it's done, I'll take 1 person out of the hunting cabin. Whoops. Take 1 person out of the hunting cabin. So now we have 4 people working on food. The next thing we're going to build is some houses. I start with 4 houses, since on hard difficulty you start with 4 families. I always like to make sure our buildings are facing each other to make sure that roads are an easy thing to take care of. And we'll just wait for them to construct those. Now you definitely want to have houses already completed before the winter hits, so that nobody freezes to death, because like starving to death, if people freeze to death, that is not good. Not good at all. So as you can see, they are getting the houses well underway, and tons of people have already moved into this one. Now, once you get your houses underway, your next priority is to come to the Resource Production tab and start a woodcutter. What a woodcutter does is he will take logs and split them into firewood, which your citizens will use in order to keep themselves warm. Oftentimes, just having housing is not enough for everyone to survive through the winter. Alright, let's get some roads underway. I recommend using dirt roads because stone roads cost so many resources to use, and I don't think that it's quite worth it. Maybe once you get to the super late game, and if you're doing really well and just swimming in resources, then maybe. But for now, I think it's definitely better to just go on the dirt road path. Alright, so we'll just wait a little bit, continue to select resources to be removed, wait for everything to be built, and we should be doing well for ourselves. We should definitely survive this first winter as far as I can tell. I see no reason to think that people will end up dying. Unfortunately, we are out of stone. So we'll go ahead and harvest the stone here. Go ahead and up the priority on that. Stone is probably going to become a major issue for us. We have some over here. We'll have to construct a bridge as soon as possible. But yeah, as you can see, it's starting to get much colder. People are starting to go back into their houses in order to stay warm. Fortunately, it looks like we'll have enough houses for everyone completed just in time. And as you can see, this icon means that the people in this house are cold. That's because we don't have anyone making firewood yet. But everything should be fine. At least for now. You can see we are out of food. Even with all these people making food, we've already run out. So I'll just go ahead and up the number of people working in the hunting cabin and the gatherer's hut, and our food count will start to increase again. Alright, the woodcutter is almost done. So next I'm going to build a storage barn, and I'll place it right next to the hunting cabin and the gatherer's hut. The reason is food cannot be placed on the stockpile, so that means that the people here, once they get the food, they have to come all the way back and place it into this storage cart. However, once we have this barn completed, they can just go ahead and stuff it right into the barn instead of having to go back and forth between these two locations. Now, you may be wondering, why did we split our houses up? Why did we build 2 houses here and 2 houses here? There's a couple reasons for that. The first one is you want to have at least some houses near where people are working. So, as you can see, the hunters are living in these houses. So if we built all of our houses over here, kind of like the same problem we have with the storage cart at the moment, they'd have to keep going back and forth all the time, especially in the winters. However, since we have these houses right next to where they work, that problem is solved. They only have to travel this amount of distance instead of this amount of distance. The second reason is if a tornado hits, and it hits where you built all of your houses and kills all of your people, that's obviously not great. However, if a tornado hits and it only hits like this area and you only lose 2 of your 4 houses, that's obviously infinitely preferable to losing all of your civilians. So those are the 2 reasons for splitting up our houses like that. Unfortunately, we are out of stone again. Stone really is going to become a major problem on this playthrough just because we have so little of it near us. Oh wait, what am I talking about? We apparently have plenty of stone, just nobody was putting it on the storage barn for some reason. That's odd. Disregard what I was saying. Stone still is going to become a problem for us though. Now something I forgot to mention is with the woodcutter, I like to set the fuel limit to 50, just because what this basically means is once you have 50 fuel, the woodcutter will say, alright, I guess I'm done. I'm going to pretend I'm just a regular laborer until we go below 50 fuel. So that's what this icon means. This icon means that we've produced our limit. The reason being is 50 is more than enough for the number of citizens we have right now, and you don't want to be wasting all of your logs that you're going to be harvesting on making firewood that is not even going to be useful. So you can see now our storage barn is complete. You can see there's already some venison and some berries and mushroom and all sorts of good stuff in there. Delicious, which is good. Now, something that you should focus on when you have your conditions similar to mine is building a bridge very quickly, because it grants you access to many more materials. So unfortunately, we'd have to build a bridge to give us access to this tiny little kind of island here, and then another bridge to grant us access to the vast amounts of resources over there. However, a bridge is not going to be our biggest priority at the moment. Our priority now is going to be the schoolhouse, which is under town services. Now, the reason for a schoolhouse being such a big priority is because educated citizens are much more efficient than uneducated citizens, as you might imagine. Alright, since we're doing really good on food, I'm going to go ahead and add just a couple more houses. You definitely do not want to add too many houses, especially if you're not doing well on food, because if you add more houses, then that means more couples will move into them and start new families, and that's a good way to start gaining more citizens. However, if you're really strapped for food, then that means that you're going to have too many mouths to feed, and people will start starving to death, which is not good. So just go ahead and build some roads, make sure that everyone has an easy time getting to where they need to go. We'll go ahead and make sure that we have a teacher working at the schoolhouse so that it actually does something. And you can see people are already becoming students. Alright. The next thing we're going to build after these two houses is a blacksmith. So similar to how you want people to be educated, you also want people to have tools. Because, as you might imagine, it's much easier to cut down trees or harvest stone if you actually have tools than it is to do it with your bare hands. Just a fun fact there for you all. It is indeed much easier. Now, you might be wondering, do I have to worry about if I don't have enough materials, if these builders are going to sit around doing nothing? And the answer is no. If you need materials, the builders will basically pretend like they're laborers. Similarly to how, since we produce enough fuel, we don't have to worry about unassigning someone from being a woodcutter. He basically will just pretend he's a laborer until his services as a woodcutter are once again needed. So you can see, two people have moved into this house. They're going to start a family together soon enough, make some more children, so that our population can grow. You can see here in our event log, apparently everything is low. And you see here, somebody already doesn't have a tool, which means that they are going to be far less effective than if they did have a tool. So fortunately we already have the blacksmith on the way to help sort that out. We do need some iron, so we'll go ahead and harvest the iron that is here and up the priority on that, make sure it gets done so that we don't have too many people without tools for too long. Okay, the next thing we're going to build after the blacksmith is done is a forester lodge. The reason for this is a forester lodge will cut down and plant new trees. So similarly to the gatherer's hut and the hunting cabin, it has the ring. You want to make sure there are as many trees in this ring as possible. Now you might be wondering, why don't I just build tons of forester lodges? And the answer is, it's far less efficient than just harvesting trees normally like we have been doing, but it's a good way to give yourself a steady source of logs. Because if you just harvest trees like we have been doing normally the entire game, you're just going to run out. So we need somebody to continue to plant new trees. Trees will regrow on their own naturally, but much more slowly than if you use a forester lodge. Alright, we're in our second winter. Luckily, nobody is freezing at the moment, which is good. We are out of logs to make more firewood with, unfortunately. But it looks like it's not going to be a problem, at least for the time being. You can see now 2 people are working without tools, unfortunately. Although our blacksmith is almost done, so we should be able to sort that out soon enough. 3 people without tools. We probably should have gotten this blacksmith a little sooner, come to think of it. Alright, finally it's done. So we'll assign someone to be a blacksmith. You make some tools for these people trying to build and cut down trees with their bare hands. That doesn't sound like fun. And once those tools are finally complete, we can remedy this issue. So we'll just have to be careful not to cut down trees in these little rings, because that would make the hunting cabin and gatherer's hut and forester's lodge far less effective. Let's go ahead and harvest from here. Should be fine. And yeah, this is just a very good way to start. We are on our 3rd year. Nobody has died yet, which is always a good sign that you're doing something well. And once we have this forester lodge completed, I think that we will go ahead and build a bridge. So I'll probably cut this out, and then I'll see you once we have the bridge underway. Alright, we're back. You can see our forester lodge is now completed, so we'll go ahead and assign 1 person to do it. I just find that having 1 forester, at least for the starting phases of the game, is more than sufficient. And we'll go ahead and get a bridge on the way. Let's try and make this as short as possible, in order to ensure that we spend the least number of materials in order to get this done. We'll build a road to it, and once we get access to this little island here, we will be able to just harvest all of these resources, and hopefully we should be feeling much better about ourselves. Now we do have tons of food, so I'm actually going to go ahead and build another couple of houses. Again, never build more houses unless you have plenty of food. Oops, we misplaced that one slightly, so we'll just do this. By using the Remove Structures tool, you can get rid of a misplaced building fairly easily. Now what's this icon mean? That basically means that it's already gone, but the little no icon, you can see it here, means that the person here can't work because they do not have the materials required to make whatever they're supposed to be making. So here we're getting that because we currently have no iron. Alright. At last we have access to this location. We'll go ahead and just select all of this. We're desperately in need of logs and iron at the moment, so hopefully we should be able to get that underway. I like to always build a stockpile near a location when whenever we're just harvesting materials like this. I like to make sure that I build a stockpile near it so that they don't have to go back and forth to the other stockpile. Just saves a lot of time and makes sure that everyone is being more efficient. So you can see 3 things have to be removed before the stockpile can be completed, but that should be fine. Our stockpile is done. You can see that now instead of going back and forth, they're just placing all the materials they gather here, which makes everyone much more efficient. You can always, of course, just get rid of a stockpile once you're finished with it, so you don't have to worry about wasting space. Alright, so now, once you have all this done, it's a good idea to start looking for more opportunities to get more food. Because as you can see, we have enough food for everyone right now, but we probably should not be thinking about building more houses at the moment because we are starting to get on the verge of having too little. It looks like we have a lot right now, but that's because it's in the spring. Once it gets to the winter, this starts to tank drastically. So this little setup we have here with a hunting cabin, a gatherer's hut, a storage barn, a forester lodge, and a couple houses. This is what you want to be, this little hub is what you want to be building all over the place. That's your best way to get food and logs, and just make sure that you have enough resources to keep everyone alive. Now we're not going to be building any of that on this little island, mostly because no matter where we would put any of the structures, a lot of it would be in water, a lot of their rings would be in water. So we're just going to go ahead and basically strip this place bare. We will place buildings here, of course, just not the forester lodge or the gatherer's hut or the hunting cabin. Now a good way to make use of this water is to build fishing docks. So we'll go ahead and build a couple of those right now. Now part of the fishing dock does have to be in water, that's why even though there's nothing here, part of it is red. So we'll just go ahead and make sure we take care of that. You do kind of sometimes have to wrestle with the terrain, but we'll figure it out. There we go, that looks like it should be fine. Now you don't want two fishing docks rings crossing over each other because that means that they'll basically just be less efficient. So you definitely would not want to do something like this. It's just a waste, essentially. What you could do, however, is something like this, assuming we could actually find a place that it would agree to go. This should be fine. So yeah, you always want to just make sure that you're not running out of food. You can see our food is starting to get low, so that's why we're expanding our ways of generating it. Alright, so I think that was enough to give you a good idea of how you should be starting your games in Banished. Now you might be wondering, what am I looking at? This doesn't look like the town we were on just a few seconds ago. And you would be correct, this is Moscow. This is a town this is one of my own towns that I've been working on for quite a while. You can see it is year 49. And I just wanted to cut this in to show you how I kind of followed my own principles that I talked to you in the opening segment. So here, this is basically the first buildings that I created. Here we have a hunting cabin, a gatherer's hut, two houses, a storage barn, and a forester lodge. This is an herbalist. I didn't talk about this in the opening segment, and here's why. Basically, the only reason you build these is to improve your citizens' health, but your citizens' health will not start to tank until a little further in, so I don't think that you should prioritize this by any means, but you definitely do want to get a couple herbalists eventually, and as you can see, similar to the hunting cabin and the gatherer's hut, you do want that ring full of forest, so that's why it's a good idea to build one in your little hub locations. Now, I mentioned before that whenever you expand, you should be looking for more forests in order to build more hunting cabins and gatherers' huts in the same little hub that we created here. Well, over here we have a gatherer's hut, a hunting cabin, a storage barn, two houses, and a forester lodge. So I actually do follow my own advice, as you can see, and if I do say so for myself, this town is doing pretty well. We have over 100 citizens, we have plenty of materials, everyone's in good health and is happy, we have over 3,000 units of food. So now that I've gotten that little bit of bragging out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what all of these other buildings are for. Let's go ahead and start with the town hall. This basically just gives you lots of information that you can gather in all of these other windows. But what it also does is you can start to accept nomads as citizens into your town. This is extremely useful because accepting nomads basically gives you a ton more civilians. It gives you a nice boost. Of course, you do have a lot more mouths to feed if you do decide to do that, but I think it is well worth it. Risk of accepting nomads, however, is that they might carry diseases with them, and that might cause an outbreak. You can have outbreaks happen even without nomads, but it is far less likely. However, there is a building that you can create to counteract that, which is the hospital. You can see we have 0 patients just because nobody's sick. I've found that you can just basically skip this building until you start accepting nomads. Again, you can get an outbreak before accepting nomads, but it is very unlikely. Okay, so here we've got the market. This is useful because a storage barn holds food and finished materials like tools, and a stockpile only holds raw materials like stone or iron or logs. A market can hold both, and it provides a really nice and easy way for your citizens to get everything they need instead of having to run all over the place. Next we have a boarding house. This is basically a kind of like a super house. It's really nice, especially when you are accepting nomads. It gives them a place to live so that you don't suddenly have tons of homeless people. This building is a chapel. It basically just gives you happiness. You don't have to worry about building this until your happiness of your citizens starts to decline naturally. These are cemeteries. These also, ironically, give you happiness, because if you do not have a cemetery and some of your people start dying, your citizens will get sad, but apparently having a place to put a tombstone for those people helps your citizens get over that. Again, you don't have to prioritize these by any means. Unless you kind of mess up, then your citizens should not be dying for a long time. Of course, you do want to get them eventually. What's this? This is a pasture. Now, I had chickens here. Unfortunately, they got diseased and they all died off. That is one of the many disasters that you can encounter in this game. I will be talking about disasters very shortly. Okay, what do we have over here? These are mines. They basically harvest you stone or... no, they harvest you coal or iron. Mine, aside from trading, is the only way to get iron in the game. This is a trading post. Every once in a while, once you've built a trading post, a merchant will come and offer to trade goods with you. So right now you can see we have our inventory stocked with tons of food and some tools, and we like to get a little bit of ale in there. Unfortunately, the merchant that's here right now is only offering food, so it doesn't really make much sense to trade away food for food, especially since we have so much food anyway. These are pastures. We're using these to grow pecans and plums and cherries and all sorts of delicious stuff in order to eat. And what else do we have? Is that everything? No, there's one more kind of building. It's really hard to see. It's the well. So I guess this is a good segue into disasters. One of the disasters that you can encounter is fires, and the way to counteract that is by having a well in order for your citizens to put out the fires. Now, I have a well here and a well here. Just make sure that I have one in every kind of central location where I have a lot of buildings in order to make sure that I don't lose all of my stuff to fires. Of course, you can try to just build all of your buildings near rivers, but I found that I just kind of like having wells. They're not too expensive anyway. Another natural disaster, as I mentioned before, is the disease. Sometimes your crops and animals will get infested. Now, the way to fix this is to just kind of switch out whatever you're planting here. So let's say there was an infestation here in my orchard. I would just switch it from plums to pecans or cherries. Unfortunately, with my animals, all I had was chickens, and I was not able to switch it, so they all got killed off. Okay, we already talked about outbreaks. You just build a hospital. Our final disaster is a tornado, and the tornado actually kind of annoys a lot of people, and it causes single-handedly a lot of people to turn disasters off. And the reason is once it strikes, since you cannot directly control your citizens, there's not too much you can do about it, and it is truly devastating. However, there is kind of something a little bit of a kind of hidden thing you can do in order to make yourself take less damage, and that is to spread everything out. One of the reasons why we have everything spread out is because we don't want to put too many buildings in our forests for our hunting cabins and gatherers' huts, but the other reason is because imagine if we had everything here, for example, and then a tornado hit here and destroyed everything. That would basically be game over. But now, if a tornado hits here and just destroys all of these buildings, yeah, that would be less than ideal, but it certainly would not be game ending. It's the same reason why we don't build too many houses in one location. If all of our people die, obviously that's also basically a game over sentence. Alright, let's talk about some tips. As I mentioned, spread out your houses, make sure you have wells. If you get infested, just switch out whatever you are planting or having in the pasture. Don't build too many things in the forest for your hunting cabin and gatherers' huts. Make sure you have a hospital before you start accepting nomads into your town, and a boarding house in order to give all those nomads a place to live. Cemeteries keep your people from getting sad when other people start to die. Oh, here's a building I forgot to mention. This is the quarry. This just gives you stone by working here. As you can see, I only have one citizen here because we have plenty of stone. And my final tip, and this is kind of a weird one, is to go AFK. That sounds really odd, but once you get into the later years, there are a lot of times I've found when you're just waiting for students and children to grow into adults so that they can actually do things, and you can, assign them jobs, because there are times when I've been forced to have all my adults working on just generating enough food for everyone. But of course, once the children who are eating food and giving nothing in return turn into useful adults, then I can start thinking about, building new things like mines and cool stuff like that. So what I would do, and this is something I did many times on this playthrough, is just save the game and then go AFK for like an hour or two. And then when I came back, in case something terrible happened, like there was a natural disaster or an outbreak or something that I could have easily dealt with but didn't because I was AFK, I would just reload the save. But if nothing bad did happen, then great, I just saved myself tons of time. So that is my advice to you. Alright, that wraps up the survival guide featuring Banished. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Limbic, and I will see you all tomorrow.